All right. So guys, thank you very much for coming. We have students and teachers and administrators from around the world in Spain, Italy, France, Texas, Florida, and Nevada that are studying about the global war on terror. I know that a lot of you guys spoke with Pentagon survivors, World Trade Center survivors, and now we are following up with speaking to actual American soldiers who are protecting our freedoms and fighting all around the world for what's right.
Well, good morning, everyone, from wherever you are in the world. It is a pleasure to see you all, and thank you so much, Raul, for having me and Brendan and for setting this up. My name's Marina. I currently am the president and CEO of the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But we are a dual military couple. I recently just got out of the Army January of this year. I was a medical service corps officer for 8 years. So medical administration, hospital administration. I did that for 8 years. I was stationed here at Fort Bragg, which is where I met Brendan. Together, we have 3 children, and my decision, I had a great career in the Army. My decision to get out was based on dual military lifestyle, and Brendan will touch on this, but he is gone a lot. He just got back from deployment number 7 in July, and with young children, it is definitely a hard balance to keep with both careers. But with that being said, definitely loved the Army. The Army was great to me and to our family. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to join the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation previously as the director of operations. And so what the foundation is responsible for is essentially building the National Global War on Terrorism Memorial in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall. And we are congressionally appointed, so we are the only ones doing this, and currently in the 24-step process to build the memorial, and right now have legislation in Congress to secure our site, which we are requesting be on what we define as the reserve. So as a reference point, that would be where the Lincoln Memorial is, where Vietnam, Korea War Memorial is. So really that central monument core is where we're looking to build, and that requires congressional approval. So I took over the foundation as the president and CEO in August, and we are trucking along with the process and getting the legislation approved. And I've been fortunate to be able to stay a part of the veteran community and continue to do something that I'm passionate about in the veteran community, and ultimately build a memorial that's going to honor excuse me, not just the soldiers that we've lost. We have unfortunately lost about 7,000 service members in these 19 years of the global war on terrorism. In addition to that, most people don't know, we've also lost about 3,400 civilian contractors in addition to that. And that number is huge, it's half. And most people don't know that. And thanks to those civilians, we are able to have the smallest all volunteer fighting force that we have, and also highlight to the family like ours that continues to make the sacrifice, our Gold Star families who have lost, and members that have given the ultimate sacrifice. So that's a little bit about me and the foundation, and I will hand it over to Brendan.
All right, hey, how's everybody going? My name is Brendan Jackman. I'm a captain in the Civil Affairs for Special Operations. I joined in 2001, shortly after 9/11, and found myself in Afghanistan pretty much soon afterwards. And then 2 years later, Iraq, and then Iraq again, and Iraq again, and Iraq again. And then in 2018, I went to Africa. And then this year, I went to Central America. And just as Marina said, we've been in this for a while together now, and it's super hard on families. So that decision for her to get out was a hard one, but it was the right one as we move forward. And I'm happy to be here with you guys and discuss anything that you may want to talk about.
So I'll if it's okay, it's kind of like an organic discussion, and we'll loop in some of the student questions. We've already had a few sent my way, and guys, just feel free to send those my way. But first of all, thank you, Brendan and Marina, for your sacrifice. You guys truly are absolute heroes And we can't thank you enough around the world for your sacrifice and for what you guys do for, you know, all of us everywhere, and preserving safety and freedom. And, you know, we can't say enough, you know, for your sacrifice. First of all, 7 tours? Was it 7 tours?
Yeah, so 7 tours. So 2 in the Army as an enlisted guy. And then I ended up getting out and being a contractor in Iraq, in which I conducted 3 more, and then came back in as an officer in 2011 and just finished up my second one again.
I think that's phenomenal, because you guys both look like you're in your early 20s, and I'm trying to do the math in my head. I don't see how that's possible, but
We'll stick with that number.
Right.
So do you guys, is there any, we had a couple of questions. Some of the students want to know, is there any specific schooling, like if someone wanted to do enlisted versus, you know, take the officer route, like go to college first? Is there anything that you could recommend if they wanted to go that route, like studying, going to a military academy or what have you?
Yeah, so I'll take the officer side, Brendan, if you then want to discuss enlisted. You know, there's different routes of being an officer. That includes, one, of course, going to a military academy, your West Point, your Air Force Academy, Naval Academy in Annapolis, et cetera. Those are super competitive, of course, phenomenal schools. So that's one avenue. Another, which is what I did, I commissioned through ROTC. So I went to a normal university. I went to Fordham University in the Bronx in New York. Wasn't far from home for me. I'm from Connecticut originally. And so you basically do your normal schooling, and then you have an ROTC. Of course, you have ROTC classes. You work out, have PT 3 times a week as well. Wear a uniform on your day of ROTC. So that's the route I went. I also did junior ROTC in high school. I was fortunate to be at a high school large enough to have that. And I mean, I knew I wanted to join the military back in middle school. Originally, there's that show Jag, I don't know if anybody has seen it, but I was actually in Italy. I am first generation Italian. So ciao, hello to all my Italian counterparts. I went to 7th and 8th grade in Italy and started watching that show. And I did miss home, and just knew that I wanted to come back and join the military. And that's what sparked it. And so that's how I ended up. We moved back to Connecticut, but then moved back to my hometown because I did have the desire to join the military, and they did have a junior ROTC program. So if you're fortunate to have that in your area, I 100% recommend it. You know, you get in a uniform, you start learning a little bit of discipline, kind of just how the military works. ROTC basically is a continuation of that in college. There are scholarships. So you can go through that process. Military academies are free. I did mention that. Besides that, and I'll let Brendan touch on this, but there are other avenues. One of them is called OCS, which is Officer Candidate School, which is what Brendan did. And so you basically, if you meet the requirements to join the service, you can request Officer Candidate School. So that would really be the third route of that. And then there's just some smaller programs if you decide to go National Guard, which a lot of people do because they get scholarships. And so they enlist in the National Guard or the Reserve, and then they go to a 4-year university. It's called Green to Gold, at least on the Army side. And so there are kind of these smaller programs that you could do. And that's really just getting with a recruiting officer that could kind of guide you in that direction. Even if you have some college done, there's still a way to do it. So no right answer. There's people from all walks of life that just do it differently. But I'll, Brendan, if you want to touch on the enlisted side, that one's definitely a little easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, with the enlisted side, I think that if you have a calling to serve, or if you feel the need that you want to serve your country and college is not for you, or you want to get out of a situation like at home, you're tired of being at home, you don't know if you want to go to college yet, you don't know what you want to do, and you still think the military is something for you, that's when the enlisted side comes in, right? Because you just take an ASVAB test, you score well enough, and then they offer you some job choices. my recommendation would be to do a little research prior to, so you know what you kind of want to do in the Army, rather than just going in blind and saying, hey, you know, give me what you got, and you end up being a plumber, or something that you don't want to do in the Army, right? Because not everything is what you see on TV. There's all the support jobs as well that are in the civilian side are also in the military, right? So there's admin, there's signal, there's comms, there's data. I mean, and then you have, of course, your infantry, your SF, and your special operation guys too. And then when it comes to OCS, yeah, Marina touched on it all. But for OCS, you need to have a degree as well, right? So you don't have to do the full gambit of ROTC, which is 4 years, but you do have to have that 4-year degree upon going to OCS, and then you go for a couple months. They beat you up a little bit, and then you find out if you made it or not. So that part. But yeah, the enlisted is easier if college is not for you.
I feel like you guys have given this speech before. You guys are very, very well said on both ends. Marina and Brendan, where are you guys exactly from? Marina, you had said Connecticut, is it?
Yes, I'm from Danbury, Connecticut, mostly born and raised there. I mentioned I'm first generation Italian. We actually moved back and forth between Connecticut and Italy multiple times, but from Connecticut, and now been in North Carolina for about 8 years, 9 years now.
Sure. We do have some, like I said, students from Verona, Northern Italy.
Okay.
Brendan, where is it that you're originally hailing from?
New York.
New York. Okay, now that brings me to my next question. So 9/11, were neither of you in the military? And then would you say that was kind of the catalyst, or that part of your decision, or how did it play any role in your decision?
So for me, funny enough, I mentioned Italy. We were in Italy unpacking from the big storage trucks that had finally brought our stuff to Italy from the US. Literally in our storage, unpacking them. And that's when my aunt called us and told us, and we kind of rushed to, the TV. And for me, it was a little different because I wasn't here. And so I didn't kind of feel the full effect. And I was in 7th grade at that point. But we had actually come back in January because my grandmother had passed away. So we came back to the States, and I just remember all the streets being lined with flags. I mean, flags were everywhere. It was a display and feeling of patriotism that I had never felt before, and that we as a country hadn't felt before. So that definitely added to my homesickness, and eventually I nagged my parents enough to come back. But to me, that really symbolized the first time you really felt that unity and patriotism.
And for Brendan, what did it play a role for you at all?
Yeah, it played a large role. So 2000, I graduated high school. I moved to Astoria for a little bit before going to college in Philadelphia. So when September 11th happened, I was freshman in college, sitting on my couch and sitting down and watching it, right? And then soon after, I ended up enlisting. I entered in the Army in November of 2001. So pretty much a month and a half later, and understanding and seeing the devastation, the closeness to friends and families, and then also that personal attack feeling was played big into my decision on going in.
So now, can you put us kind of in your shoes as far as when you entered right after, it was the first attack on American soil, what, since Pearl Harbor. And so it's just kind of like, what was kind of going through your mind, as you're enlisting and, not knowing what tomorrow brings, what kind of emotions happen?
Yeah, probably the full spectrum, right? Not understanding where we're going from there, because we knew we were at war. The Army was buzzing up, right? The recruiters are like, are you really want to do this? At the same time, trying to get as many people as they could in. And you're full of this feeling of servitude, right, to your country, but also at the same time, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous because you're going to war, right? And you knew at some point that you would be in some far off distant land. It was just a matter of time when you got there. And so that feeling, even the first time I stepped off the plane in Afghanistan, and I'll never forget this feeling. I just remember hearing that Afghanistan was so hot that it would take your breath away, right? And so the first time I stepped off the back of a C-130 in Afghanistan, I remember like holding my breath to see if I could breathe or not, and then taking a few more steps out into the countryside and like, okay, I can actually breathe. It's not 190 degrees where I can't, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna make it. So that was like my first introduction to the Middle East and understanding that, and then plus, you know what I mean, seeing what's going on.
And obviously, and this question is for both of you guys, obviously there's you're a sacrifice as whereas you know you're going to be in harm's way, you know that you could potentially be hurt or killed, but what about the sacrifice of family? Because you guys are in a very unique scenario and situation that not a lot of couples find themselves in which both parental figures are service members. So what is that like? Like, you know, seeing your kids grow up from afar or having a marriage, you know, a distant kind of situation, because that's, I feel like, not really communicated when kids learn about the sacrifice of the American soldier in these wars on terror.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, and I'll start by saying there are dual military couples that do it, and they do it graciously and with the support of family, which thankfully we had when I was still in. And there's definitely nothing wrong with it. Everybody just has a different threshold of sacrifice that they're willing to make. That's really what it comes down to. And, you know, I mentioned I got out, and it was because of those things. It was, you know, having very young children. It was because our career paths were going to go in separate directions for a little while, even if it's just a couple years. The Army and the military in general does try and keep dual military couples together to an extent and as best they can, but just natural career progression doesn't always line up, especially because he was a couple years ahead of me. And, you know, so you kind of couple me being home with young kids, Brendan always being gone, because even when he is home, he's gone a lot for training, for other reasons. You know, you kind of have like a year in between deployments, and then you just start prepping for the next deployment, which means it's more training, recertifications, and so he's gone. And, you know, the first deployment as a family wasn't too bad. Our son was a year old at the time. But really it was the second one. And I kind of knew it was coming once we had our daughter, that, you know, he was kind of at an age where he understood that he was gone, definitely felt the impact of dad being gone. He's also a daddy's boy. I will admit that. So there was just a loss felt there. And ultimately I decided, you know, kids are resilient. Of course, they do adjust. My parents were here. We're lucky they moved from Connecticut when my mom retired to come and help us. And that was the only way that we could make it work, because we work such long hours, et cetera. But essentially, you know, having one parent always gone and maybe two parents at a time and leaving my parents with young children just wasn't something I wanted, we wanted for our family. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It just comes down to personal thresholds of kind of what you're willing to give up and sacrifice. And, you know, and then to the point of how it affects families, of course, we've been fortunate to have Brendan come back in one piece from his training and deployments. And some families are not as lucky, right? And we refer to those families as Gold Star families. And I always tell people, you know, of course, there's an element of honor and service that comes with the job. And we all know that going into this, right, that it is selfless, that there are sacrifices that are going to be made, which include your own life. But that's, you know, that's not just, sometimes it's maybe glorified, I think, especially in my position as a wife that is home with the kids and trying to keep everything together at home, that sometimes that rhetoric is glorified. And when somebody has given the ultimate sacrifice and their life is lost, there is a real family behind that. There are real children that are going to be without a mother or a father, and that's a lifelong consequence, right? And of course, we as a country do a great job in honoring those families, but I always want to get that point across that it does come with honor and elements of service, but there are definitely real families that are feeling the impact of that, these constant deployments, et cetera.
So Brendan, I'm not sure if you wanted to touch on as far as being a father and a husband, like 7 tours, they obviously the tours by themselves, even if you're an individual, seem like next to impossible, but having family at home, what is that like?
Yeah, and I think like when I was younger, so 2001, right? It was much easier because it was just me. But moving forward, and then also becoming a part of the special operations community, we are gone a lot more than a regular soldier, right? And that's due to, like Marina said, training, and then the amount and the rapidness in which we deploy, right? We're not just going to the Middle East, we're going to Africa and South and Central America and all over the world. It's hard. And it's hard as a father and a husband to watch your kids grow up over Zoom, or watch your kids grow up over Signal, or watch your kids grow up, through FaceTime. And I'm glad that technology has risen as fast as it has, because that still allows us to have that bond. Because in 2001 through 2008, that wasn't there, right? I would have to find a satellite telephone to make a call back home or write letters. And so technology has made it easier, but it's never easy watching your family grow while you're in harm's way somewhere else. And I think that's the hardest part of doing that. Plus seeing, right, the sacrifices that your wife is making while you're away and your kids aren't behaving and all that other great stuff that happens with toddlers. You see that it's hard.
Well, thank you both for your sacrifice and your service. We have some student questions. Is that all right that we open it up a little bit? Okay. Jonathan, student here in Nevada. Jonathan, I'm going to unmute you. You had 2 really good questions.
Yes. My first question was, what is it like to be in the Army?
Okay. I'll touch on that a little bit and then hand it over to Brendan. It was the time of my life. I loved it. And, it is structured. I'll start by saying that it is a job that holds you to high standards, high morals, high expectations. You start your day every morning working out with your soldiers at 6:30 in the morning until 7:30. And then, you carry on with your work day, but you answer to a commander, that commander answers to a commander. It's structured. Pretty much everything you expect to see in the military, right? Depending on your job, there's training requirements. So you're juggling kind of the administrative part of the job as well as the training, which sometimes happens in your unit where you are. Sometimes it means you're traveling somewhere within the United States to certify on certain skills. But ultimately, your mission is to maintain readiness when we're at home. And that means being physically fit, being medically able to deploy. For me, our unit was always on a domestic mission, kind of if we had another, God forbid, another 9/11 or specifically chemical attacks, rather. We were trained as a medical unit to deal with those, very FEMA oriented as well. And then some, you had a 24-hour turnaround global response force. So basically everything you do is to maintain readiness of yourself and of your equipment to make sure that you can leave within 24 hours anywhere in the world. Brendan, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that as a young man or a young woman, having that ability to enter in this brotherhood and sisterhood is something that you'll never have anywhere else outside of like a police station or a fire department where you meet people who are willing to sacrifice their lives to defend you, right? And so that bond that you create with your brothers and sisters in arms is something that will last with you for a lifetime. But I think Marina did hit it on the head where it's saying that, like, it's not easy. There's things that you're going to want to do and somebody's going to tell you you can't do it, and you just kind of have to follow that order, or you're going to be told they have to go outside and sweep some rocks, you know what I mean, to make the area look pretty, and you're going to be like, what for? But you're still going to have to do it. So I think that it's fun. I think that it's an experience. And I think that you'll gain lasting relationships for the rest of your life. But at the same time, you are giving up some of those freedoms of saying no or doing whatever you want whenever you want for that.
Some pretty sound advice. We have a follow-up question from Jonathan. Jonathan, you can ask your second question.
What advice would you give me if I were to consider joining the Army?
I would say if you're considering joining the Army, definitely start getting yourself physically in shape. You can look up Army PT standards on any recruiting website. Definitely start getting yourself in shape, especially for endurance type activities. If you do go enlisted and go to boot camp or ROTC, you'll want to do that. Definitely address any health issues that you have just to prep yourself to go into it. And besides that, just have a really positive outlook and kind of take every day at a time. And if you have a goal, joining the Army as to what branch you want to be in or what specialty you want to do, let them know that up front. Recruiters, honest people, of course, but, you definitely want to be upfront with what it is and don't settle. If they're not offering you what you want, tell them, either go look at another branch or tell them, maybe I'll wait. So definitely don't settle, have a good outlook, and get yourself physically in shape. Brendan,
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. And also, John, being that I've been both enlisted and officer, kind of think about, hey, what do you want to do? I would suggest an officer. Go in that route. So that means go get your degree at a college, experience college, and then go into military if that's something that you want to do. But if you want to directly go into the military soon, straight after high school, then yeah, go ahead, try it out. I mean, it's not forever, right? You sign up for 3 or 4 years to see if it's something that you like to do. And at the end of your obligation, if that's not for you, then you get out and then you have that experience to bring in with you in the civilian.
Yeah, and I want to add to that real quick, Ralph, and just say that if you do join and realize, okay, it's not for you, you have a 3 or 4 year commitment. I promise you, you can do anything for a few years. In the meantime, you have gained probably a skill for whatever branch or MOS it is that you've gone into. So you've gained a skill, you've gained experience being in charge of something, right? Of managing people just through natural rank progression. And so there's nothing, even if you did get out after 4 years, all of that is 100% valuable experience once you get out and move over to the civilian side.
It's great advice. I wish they had that when we were kids.
Right.
So Mnet has a question for Brendan. So Mnet, you should be able to unmute. Okay, I think she's having microphone issues. It's all right. I got your question though. I got your back, buddy. She wanted to know what country in Africa were you in?
So I was in Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria.
That is, and was each, I've always wanted to know this, was each country significantly different to each other, even though they were close in proxemics?
Kind of. So Chad is much more arid than when you move into Cameroon. Cameroon is considered like the fruit basket of Western Africa. And then you move up to Nigeria, which is like Borno forest, and a lot of forest when I was out in that area. So you went from the deserts of Chad over into like the lush area of Cameroon into the very dense forests of Nigeria and Niger.
Were the cultures much different and as well, or is it just, was there similarities?
So two different things. Cultures based on tribal affiliation, because of the lines that were drawn to create the states or the countries. So you do have that like transnational tribal identity that would go from Cameroon up to Niger and Nigeria, but then also, yes, for language based, right? Cameroon is an English speaking country, so is Nigeria. And then in Chad is French speaking for the most part. And so that difference is pretty big, especially that in Cameroon, they were having a English-French conflict within the country itself.
That is incredibly interesting stuff. There was a question from one of the students, and they wanted to know, as far as resources for any military service members, like if they're going through PTSD or anything coming home from these unimaginable situations, what kind of things are offered for that?
So there's, when you come home, and I'll let you touch on this, Brennan, you go through a pretty thorough physical and mental analysis. And, all those things are kind of built into your reorientation of being home. With that being said, of course, a lot of people, don't realize that they are having issues with PTSD at the time, or do they want to really talk about it or bring it up and get the help that they do need. But with that being said, there are resources available through the hospitals, through mental health, literally any resource imaginable you can think of, we have it. They have access to these 24/7. You can walk into a clinic at the hospital. You can walk into a behavioral health clinic. You can call a hotline. I mean, we have so many resources. And it really comes down to when individuals are ready to receive the help. But there's been no lack of that, and getting out, even getting out, the Veterans Affairs, the VA does have resources in place for that. So, Brendan, you might have some more advice on resources, though.
Yeah, I think that it's no longer the era of Vietnam or World War II where shell shock was what it was called, and then that was it, right? So one thing that has come out of the Global War on Terror is the education and understanding of PTSD and how it affects you. And so especially for us in like the special operations community, because we go back and forth so much, we're always introduced to these programs that they have, right? But you have to say that you feel something or that you're having these issues. You almost have to self-identify to get treatment. Otherwise, no one will ever know, right? And that's why it's like a silent killer within the United States Army. Because if people don't know, because you can't see it on somebody's face, right? It's not like a injury in which you can see, then nobody will be able to give you treatment.
So we had a follow-up question. Again, we'll do like a couple more questions. We'll let you go. I'm so sorry that we're.
Oh no, this is great. No worries.
This is really cool. And so one of the students wanted me to ask this question on their behalf, and they want to know, what can they do to participate in the war against terrorism? Is there anything that students can do? Is there, this would be a great time for your website. I think if you want to just kind of give them any resources with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few things, and I'm glad whoever asked that, because that is actually a question the foundation receives often from volunteers that want to help, whether or not they were in the military at all. And I'll start by saying our website is gwotmemorialfoundation.org, gwotmemorialfoundation.org. And we have a great volunteer base. And, I would say that joining the military is not the only way to serve your country and be a good, patriotic citizen, right? It really comes down to being a good neighbor, being respectful towards others. It could mean volunteering in your local soup kitchen, at your church. Ultimately, being a good citizen in the community that you are in is really what it comes down to. Of course, if you want to wear a uniform, come on over and do so. But, a lot of time, the strength of this country and the service and the patriotism of this country really lies in the smaller communities and the service. you can give back to your local community. And if specifically, if you want to volunteer with military organizations, there are so many military organizations out there, some that we work with. Boots Campaign is one that we are on. Team Rubicon is a really great one. You know, Wounded Warrior. You know, there's so many organizations that host events that you could contact them, just sign up. National Military Family Association is another one. You can just go to their website, sign up as a volunteer. There's usually somebody that's been designated for certain states or areas of the country that will send updates on when you can volunteer. And you can even go to, you know, there's nursing homes that are veteran heavy. You know, you can really find so many places to volunteer.
That was great advice, and we'll definitely share out your website after we edit this video and stuff. So before we let you guys go, we have a lot of students who wanted to know what kind of advice would you give to them about persevering through adversity as they get older and kind of figure out what they want to do with life, whether it be a firefighter in the military, a surgeon in the military, or, you know, it could be any job or career outside the military. But I think you guys are definitely well-versed in persevering through adversity, both of you guys. And I wanted to see if you guys could touch on that before we let you go.
Yeah, and this is probably a good question and an answer we should have prepared for our kids. So thank you for asking that. But I'm really about keeping it simple, right? Go back to the basics. That is actually what was introduced to me by a senior non-commissioned officer who was my platoon sergeant. And it comes down to stay true to you, stay true to who you are, stay true to what it is you want in life, whatever goals that you have for yourself. It means that you're not always going to feel like doing something. You're not always going to feel like doing the right thing sometimes, or doing the thing that is the right answer to do. And, you know, you basically mentally push through it because that is the right thing to do. You stay true to whatever your goals are. And like I said, back to the basics to me are, what is it that I want? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? And get the work done, right? There is no space for laziness, for excuses. There's really no space for that. You get past an obstacle, on to the next one. Brendan, I'm sure will mention, he has a quote that says fail fast. And basically it means just keep on going and just get through one obstacle after the other. And you know, what I learned in the Army doing that, and kind of that endurance and perseverance, has just served me so well in the position I'm in now, because like I mentioned, it's a 24-step process to build a memorial. Who knew, specifically on federal ground in DC, that it would be such a lengthy process that requires 2 legislations in Congress. And I 100% give credit to the Army for having been able to prepare me to, you know, have the endurance and the perseverance to keep on going with that, not taking no as an answer, and just keeping my eyes on the goal. And the only thing I'll add to that is do something that you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to get the strength to keep on going. You're not going to get up at 6:30 in the morning when it's 15 degrees outside to go work out with your soldiers, right? So it has to be something that you are truly passionate about. And I think the military just does such a great job at giving purpose, especially because it's not always about yourself. It's about other people that are counting on you and other people that you're responsible for. And so maybe you haven't figured out exactly what you want in life, but because you're responsible to others, you kind of have that purpose. And I think the military does such a great job at doing that. So a little bit all over the place of an answer, but that's essentially my advice.
All right, and hey, for me, based off of what Marina said, I live by fail fast, fail forward, right? So if I'm gonna fail at something, I wanna fail fast, but I also wanted to project me going forward to what my goal is going to be. because there's nothing wrong with failure, right? We learn more from failure than we do from our successes. And there's been plenty of times in my life where I failed at something, right? But it was moving towards a goal. And so taking a step back, figuring out, hey, I failed at this, right? How can I do better next time? Take those lessons learned and then keep on going forward. And then also through perseverance, understanding like, where is your happy place? Is it at home sitting, playing Xbox? Is it hanging out at the coffee table with your wife? Is it playing around with your brother and sister? And then whenever you find yourself in a place of conflict or a place where you feel uncomfortable, just revert back to that space and understand like, hey, this is where I want to get back to. Mine was always on the bed with the kids in the bed jumping around, right, causing a ruckus. And no matter where I was or where I am in the world, if I find myself in an uncomfortable position, I always revert back to that, right? That's my happy place. And having a happy place allows you to push through anything so you can get back to where that is at. So that's what my recommendation would be. Fail fast and fail forward. And then also wherever that happy place you have is, just make sure that you're able to turn that on when you feel uncomfortable.